All right, let's do it.
Okay.
You got a ping.
Yeah.
You got a pingy ding. Does
I
that
got a
have
ping.
anything to do with anything?
No, it's my email.
Hello.
Good morning.
Welcome to the Sun Dragon Sideshow.
The Dear Becky and Lizzie edition.
And we actually have lots of questions. So
yeah, yesterday they just kept coming. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so hello. I'm Rebecca. Trying to get my name tag here. When I wear the braids, I never know where to put that. I might end up putting it like right here. We'll see. I'm Rebecca. I'm the owner of Sun Dragon Art and Fiber in Overcast in gonna rain today.
Gonna rain today.
Brevard, North Carolina.
I'm Liz. I'm the minion there.
Yay! So I have only had a little bit of my coffee, and I realized on the drive in that I forgot my B12 vitamins and my calcium and everything this morning. So it's gonna be a fun day.
It's okay. This morning I woke up and I'd say the spirit was willing, but the flesh was weak. And no, the spirit wasn't even willing to get up either. Nope.
She texted me the spirit wasn't willing. I'm like, is that what your way of telling me?
Yep. Nope.
Yeah, hard time getting up.
Yep.
Yeah. So we're gonna do what we can. It was almost chilly enough for me to wear this back in, and of course I'm wearing clashing greens and I don't care. I mean, I do care, but I don't. It depends on how cold I get, how much I care.
Well, yesterday when it started to rain,
we were outside and it started.
We were outside
and the blowing enough that we were not fully sheltered from the rain.
Temperature probably dropped like 10 degrees because.
And you were dressed as you are today, and guess what? She was cold.
I put a sweater on.
Excuse me.
And I wore it home because it didn't warm up much. I was like,
nope. Oh. Luckily, we have lots of things we've made at the shop, so it works out.
Yeah,
it works out. Anyway, so let's get to these because my computer froze right before filming this. I was trying to get all of our mailing stuff done, and I didn't, which means, yeah, we got to do some stuff. And then we got to be ready for help to come. And I'm sure the Bracken Mountain Breakfast Club will not be gone. So it's going to be fun. As long as the rain holds off a little, we'll be okay. So it's not going to rain till this afternoon.
That's what it says, but there were freckles walking down my steps today.
That means we see raindrops on the ground. We call them freckles. So you know the lingo if you ever come by. What shall we start with?
We'll start with the first email that I got.
In order that we received them.
Dear Becky and Lizzie, I know Indie Dyers hand-dyed yarn, but can you define the origin or term indie dyer? Thank you, Patty.
Can we try that again? Because there's all this like sentences. What?
I know Indie Dyers hand dye yarn. Say that 5 times fast. But can you define the origin of the term indie dyer?
I want to be like she sells seashells by the seashore. See, I can't do it either. So did we do any research on this, or are we just going to expound upon this?
I think indie dyers comes from like independent dyers.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Like so I think our generation, and I'm talking like children of the 90s and 80s, are more familiar with the indie term. It really, yes, it's an abbreviation of independent dyers, like indie rockers, indie dyers. It's someone who, I mean, today we'd just be like small business. You know, we also have very more like colloquial terms for it. I want to say it just comes from buzzwords of the culture world about someone who is doing stuff on their own rather than through a mass-produced company. And they're hand dyeing. Like we have hand dye yarns in the shop that are not indie dyed because they are done like the Fiber Space, the rack right behind me. I wouldn't call it indie dyed because it's a big company that probably does things in massive batches or has a mill that does things for them. That's not independent. That is like a big box store type of thing. And some of that, like that's one of my favorite yarns to knit with. It's beautiful. The tonal quality of it, the hand dyedness of it is gorgeous, but it's not super small batch. Someone did it like in their basement or at their farmhouse or their kitchen or something like that. That is the independent, the indie dyer variety. So that's our knowledge of where it comes from. Now there could be more to it, I could do a quick Google search for you, but you could also do the Google search, I think, and see what comes up, because I'm sure there's different people who have different philosophies on this.
It's kind of like micro brewing and home brewing. Like,
Yes.
you know, breweries exist everywhere, but there are people that still brew in their house.
Yes, and instead of
so-
like calling it a micro dyer, you
Yeah.
know, like the indie term is what has taken root in the yarn world. Yeah, my brother-in-law brews beer in his basement, and he enters competitions and things like that. I don't know if we have competitions for indie dyers, because they're all so uniquely different. Like, there's so many people who can be really good at what they do, but their styles will be really different. Like Daydream Dye Works, her stuff, her colors are different than Yarn Babies, are different than Fiber Fairies. These are all small companies, like of usually one person, maybe a little more. Like Lola Bean, her yarn is gorgeous, and she has been able to expand her production a little bit, but it's really still her and her family doing everything. Adela and her family doing everything. And that I think qualifies her as an indie dyer, even if her sales might look different than someone else's, like Emerald from Daydream. Like, she really only wholesaled to us, and she retailed herself. You could get stuff from like her Etsy shop. If you go on Etsy and look up hand dyed yarn, you're going to have hundreds of sites probably, and they're all going to have their own personality, and that's awesome. So yeah.
And some of them have gotten bigger,
yeah,
like Lola Bean and
but it's still, I would
But,
still
yeah.
classify her as indie dyed. It's not about the revenue someone brings in. What, for me, whether I would classify them as a more successful indie dyer if their revenue is higher, and kudos, awesome to them. But there's still a limited availability to their yarns. Like, you're not going to find them at every shop. Even Emma's yarn, I would say, is what we're gonna say.
I was thinking like Emma's yarn, like Lola Bean, it started out as she started dyeing yarn and sold it in her local yarn shop. And now it's
I think
like
her, like, a family member
Yeah.
owned the yarn shop
Yeah.
or something that she first started in. And now you can find it in many, many locations.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about like Emma's production, or I only, from Lola Beans, I only know what I see on Instagram, you know, right? So I can't speak to how big the production has gotten, but I still would say that it is it doesn't rival a place that has like warehouses and things like that. Like, it's not Cascade or Plymouth, and they have their hand dye varieties amongst their other yarn lines, but someone whose sole dedication is to yarn dyeing, and it's really functioning either out of their house or they have a place where they do their work, but we're not talking about massive reserves. We're talking about it's dyed, it's sold, they dye more, they sell more. Like, we're not talking about super overstock or anything like that. Like, Feederbrook is one that I think is kind of in the middle for us. I mean,
I still consider her an indie dyer and spinner
because it's all in house,
because it's all
in.
in. But she started just like all the rest. Only she took her she spun it and dyed it, and
I want to say her
ground up.
stuff is in maybe 80 stores. Which, grand scheme of life, is not a huge number, but it's a successful number, right? But she's not exporting things to get done other places anymore. And a lot of indie dyers do not necessarily make their own yarn, but they're dyeing stock they get from somewhere else. Feederbrook is an exception to that. Like, there's lots of little variants and things. But people really crave that locally dyed, or
the personal touch.
That's I knew there was a phrase. Yeah, the personal touch rather than mass produced. And we have stuff that is everything from mass produced to personal touch to somewhere kind of in the middle. So that's where the term comes from, though. I think it's more of almost like a grunge term from the 90s is what I think about when I think of indie, you know. So hopefully we've addressed that. Do some Google searches though, do some other research and see what you find. And if anything conflicts, or, you know, sometimes the growth of words moves away from where it came from to what it is known as today. So how we think of it could be very different than how it started.
Yeah.
So what do we got next?
Is there any method for estimating yarn requirements when changing a pattern weight and needle size? Specifically, I want to do the butterfly papillon in DK weight on size 6 needles, but I want to make sure I buy enough yarn. I love your bigger butterflies and I want to make one. Thank you for any help you can
Bigger,
provide.
butter, better. I'm thinking like,
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah. You can speak to this more than I can. I'm going to get my 2 cents out real fast. As fast as I can. All bets are off when you change yarn size, like especially going thicker, and needle size going thicker. You're going to have to highly overestimate, and we don't have a mathematical formula for that. Is the short what I think of off the top of my head. You have modified a lot of things. You keep pinging.
I can turn my ringer off.
That's okay.
I would say yes and no.
Okay, so that's why she's done more of this. I'm turning it over.
So because my modifications for like most of my patterns, I change needle size and weight. Like that's pretty much all I change.
We were discussing yesterday with Carol that that's a lizification, is bumping up yarn and needle size, whereas a Carolization is changing the pattern. Anyway, yes,
I have in general, if you get the yarn and the needle size that you're bumping up to the same, you know, distance or space around a fingering and worse,
so like
fingering and needle,
like fingering, like we're talking proportional increase. So fingering on a 4 versus like worsted on a 10, say, or something like that,
if
right?
you can
like,
get the increment about proportional
math terms,
and it's not like an exact science, but it'll take about as much yarn,
really,
maybe a little extra. Like when I did my Quicksilver, I got the needle size up just, you know, with the yarn, and I bought exactly the same yardage in worsted.
I thought it would, okay, but
that it was in fingering, and I ran out on the cast off. Now gauge and everything else play a huge role in that. I'd buy a little extra.
I thought you always had to get more.
I always buy more because I work in a yarn shop.
To be on the safe, that's one question the person's addressing is to be on the safe side. Always get more. So would you say that for the papillon, like you bought if you kept the needle somewhat proportional and you bought the same yardage?
Anything bigger than like a 5 is going to require 2 balls of your fingering weight contrasting yarn.
I'm not talking about.
I have with the papillon, it's kind of different because most of that, like I've either stuck with fingering weight on a bigger needle or DK.
I'm thinking of like you made one out of, or we've sold stuff for like say the Ito. That's worsted weight. So the butterfly is written for fingering weight on a 4, and for when you made like a worsted, like when we were calculating roughly based on what you used, the Ito is a worsted weight. It's what, 200 meters?
It's 437 yards per ball.
Sorry, I'm totally off. So the yardage, the yardage is kind of the same as a fingering weight skein.
I did my Ito ones on a 10.5. And I ate into a 3rd ball but if I had done it on a 9, I might not have.
So I'm still seeing that as a lot more yardage needed, because you need like a skein in it, like on a regular needle.
On a regular,
you haven't done
need a skein. Yeah,
you need
a skein and a half.
You need a skein and a half,
but you're still buying 2.
Yes, but you're saying you needed a 3rd, so it wasn't a skein and a half.
Probably because I bumped the needles too far.
And that's the thing, that the needles are the yarn is one thing, needles are another. Changing both, especially because you need to, it really throws a lot of things into flux where it's hard to have a mathematical formula.
Yeah.
So you're going to need at least as much yarn as you would have when it's thinner. And I would overestimate is kind of where we're headed.
Yeah. So. I will say anything bigger than a 4, you need two 437 yards.
So if you're keeping it
to make sure that you have enough for the contrast color.
If for the contrast color?
Yeah. It eats
you need more than one. And
yeah, it eats into a second bowl for the
taking the Papillon as an example. If you change the needle size, it will eat up more yarn, and that makes sense. Just the needle size. If you keep the needle size proportional to I feel a sneeze building. We'll see when that comes. If you keep the needle size proportional to the yarn, which is difficult with shawls because often the needle size is bigger than what the yarn calls for. You may need about the same yardage, but I would overestimate.
Get a little more. Yeah. Like my worst.
That is my fear of saying, hey, if you go from fingering on this to worsted on this, same amount of yardage is you probably will need it.
When I did my fingering weight butterbeer one and my Lorna's laces one, I used in the worsted weight I used on a 9, I only had 4 skeins of my main color, and I wound up having to flip some stuff. So in worsted weight, it might take closer to 5. That was on a 9.
5, and if we estimate like 200 to 220 on a skein.
On fingering, I want to say
yards.
I used into like at least 3 skeins.
So about 1,000 yards on a 9, whereas I still think you're going to need more. I still think you need to highly overestimate because doing that, like you haven't done one just on a 4.
No.
That is only about 600 yards.
Yeah.
So to say just change your weight and change your needle size for the Papillon. We're saying the Papillon throws all things into chaos. I think you're going to need a lot more yarn when you go bigger and bigger needles, even if it's proportional.
Yes and no. Like it's kind of that depending on your gauge, depending on what colors.
Which is why I'm just going to say overestimate. But
I will say that for the moth.
Oh, the moth's going to eat up tons more yarn.
If you do the moth version, it's the 5 colors and 6 colors.
If you do the colors for the moth too, that's again throwing all kinds of extra stuff in here. Yes.
You keep messing my train of thought.
Because you never do that to me. I'll be quiet. Go ahead.
If you do the 6 colors and the pop, you will still need 2 bowls of your contrast. But in 100-gram bowls, you can get, like, I even did a worsted weight on a 10.5 out of 100 grams, and I didn't have to buy any, but the 6 colors in the pop. Like, because on hers, it's by your 50 grams, and 50 grams will get the moth done. She has a caveat. There might be a row that but 100 grams of anything thicker will get your,
you did the contrast on the moth with only 100 grams of worsted weight?
2 bowls of contrast. And then the 100 grams of each of the colors in the pop.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. I'm clarifying because what you're saying makes total sense to you right now. And I think a lot of people watching are like, huh?
Yeah. Like,
because I'm going
where you build the fade and
once you make them, this will all make sense. No, but I'm just going back to what you said about the worsted one. You needed like 5 balls. You need to crack into a 5th 100-gram skein. When we say balls, we're talking about 100-gram skeins of your main color.
I only had in my worsted weight one. It's my red and black one. I had 4 skeins of my main color, but I think I managed to only use 2 skeins of my contrast because, and I still flipped, like there was enough in there to flip a couple.
I still think that's a lot more yarn than just taking how much yardage you need for fingering and buying that much thicker yarn. That's all I'm saying.
Bumped the needles bigger than like I should have done it on a 7, and it probably would have brought the yarn meterage down.
I wouldn't do a worsted weight on a 7 though. So I agree with you. Yeah,
7 or an 8 would have still brought the yardage down.
Yes, but if the fingering, so we're gonna go off on this all day. This is what happens in the shop when y'all aren't around. The fingering weight's not done on a fingering weight needle, so I wouldn't do the worsted weight on a worsted weight needle. Is what I'm saying. if we're talking about keeping things proportional. We should move on to something else in a second, but
Some of our
do you see what I'm
fingering
saying?
weight calls for a 4 on the ball band.
Now we're getting into super nitty gritty. When we get off camera, I'm gonna have her show me a fingering weight that we normally use for the Papillon that says to use a size 4 needle. But let's move on. I would to sum up for that person who wrote that question, because we both have to be right apparently. I would overestimate a lot, because there isn't a magical formula. We've said that several times. There isn't a magical formula to figure that out. If you change things change. So like the ranunculus, in theory, because it's all done on the same needle, it's thinner yarn to thicker yarn, you need the same amount, but that's keeping the needle the same. Your question was addressing changing both needle size and yarn, and that throws things into a lot of chaos. So it's not that you need to double how much yarn you need, but you definitely need more than the pattern's calling for if you're making something bigger, regardless of if it's needle size, if it's changing the yarn and the needle. And I don't want to make promises we can't keep. So we're not going to say, well, just take 2/3 and do this and that. We don't know, because everyone knits differently.
I wouldn't say like 4 skeins more. I'd say maybe buy an extra skein.
Okay. That's why I was just saying, is like doubling, maybe too much, but maybe not. And yeah. So as you can see from our conversation, there is no easy answer. Moving on.
Okay, last question.
Excuse me. Yes.
Dear B&L, just curious about what determines the colors you choose to stock when there are more colors than you have space for. Too hot to knit in Florida.
So this is a fascinating question. Thank you for delving into the mind of a yarn shop owner. So we can both speak to this, because I pull you in on decisions for colors all the time.
So pre-pandemic, when the reps would come by the shop, what would happen was, so Rebecca would go, not buying any yarn. We don't have room.
The basics of this
we don't have
question
money.
in a minute. We have the story first.
Not buying any yarn. And the yarn rep would come in with their suitcases, like the great big traveling forever suitcases, and they'd start laying out yarn samples and books and just flip through and ooh, this is pretty, and ooh, this is pretty. And Rebecca's like, nope, nope, nope. And then she'd go, Liz, cut the ropes. They have red and black in a yarn that we both liked, and
because she likes those colors.
Yeah. And so
that's to
then
get her to convince me to or to let me buy yarn. Yeah.
And then
she's still not addressing her. Go ahead.
And then we'd play the penny or post-it note strip game, because they have like 15 colors in the palette, and we only want to bring in like 8 to 12.
Mm-hmm.
So we generally build a rainbow and neutrals.
That's what I was getting to eventually. Yes, the story of we bring in sometimes more yarns than we should. So like Cascade, some of Cascades and some of Plymouth's, like some of the basic yarns will have like 40 colors. We do not have room for 40 colors in the shop. So starting from neutrals and rainbow is a really great way to make sure that we try to have our bases covered, right? And then another thing Liz was addressing is we want to bring in colors we like. But again, keeping to that rainbow idea, it will help us pull in colors that maybe other people will like. Like there's a lot of nuance that goes into this. But yes, starting with, we need some neutrals and we need to try to hit everything in the rainbow will give us a really good start.
And part of that is because there are colors that neither one of us are really drawn to.
But like, someone else might be.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so if we build a rainbow, there's going to be a color,
hopefully,
that
and then
it's not always going to be the right color green or the right color orange or whatever, but
never going to be the right color. Or if we have room for an extra color, we might do another blue or a teal, or it's, if you only bring in the colors that you like, that's lovely, but not everyone's going to love the colors that you like. and having two of us to bounce ideas off of can help us broaden the palette. And you know, the yarn rep just wants us to buy more yarn, so they might just keep pushing and not necessarily be like, sometimes they'll be good to help and sometimes they'll be like, but get another color, why not throw another one in on top of that. There's some amount of just making some judicious decisions depending on what money we have, and when two colors are close, which one do we think our audience, the people walking in, will like more. There's a lot of risks we take, especially when we buy stuff online right now, because you all know from watching our show, true color is not all that you see, is not always what's going to arrive. So, but definitely, like, it depends on how much of the palette we want to bring, how many of the colors we want to bring in, what colors we'll pick. But yes, when Liz talks about the penny game, we have the color card sitting in front of us, and I'll be like, I have 10 pennies in my hand, and I will put them, or like we'll fold things up or down based on the little yarns, if they're movable like that, based on what we want or what we need to take out. And it's like, do we have a yellow? Okay, we have a yellow. Do we have an orange, or do we have like a burnt sienna, or do we have a blue? You know, which purple do we want? Do we have colors that are so similar to each other we might as well take one out and throw another like grello in addition to a green and a yellow?
And neutrals,
takes a while.
You know, which out of the 5 shades of gray and 4 shades of taupey browns,
yes, like which ones
do we think are going to, you know? And sometimes, like with the axis, we love the axis, but there was only one choice for green. There were 5 blues. So
we brought the whole palette in for that when it started. And then what do we add, you know, and do we make the right choice? Not all the time, but we try to make sure that they're like, instead of picking 2 browns that are really close to each other, like say that there's 4 browns and they're progressively getting darker, maybe we'll get one on each end, and if we need a third, we'll pick between these 2, that kind of thing. But and sometimes I'll look at the yarn and say, we have a hole in our palette, we need something that's in the middle here, or we need a Kelly green, because everyone's looking for Kelly green right now and we don't have a Kelly green on the shelves. Problem with that is, when we say Kelly green and when a customer says Kelly green, we're thinking of completely different things in our heads. So that's always, with all this yarn in the shop and we still don't have the right color in the right fiber and the right machine washability level for somebody, it'll happen. So but it's both fascinating and kind of fun and kind of frustrating to pick out yarn colors, especially when we're bringing in a brand new yarn, or when someone shows us new colors in a yarn we have.
Or like with the commercial, like Plymouth Encore, it's our biggest range of color, and people come in and they're like, I need a teddy bear brown, which you would think would be an easy find. No, because they've decided that the color palette this year does not include teddy bear brown,
which is, I think, crazy. Or this sweater, I think there's 1 ball of this green over there right now, if that, because I made the sweater and everyone said, what a lovely color, and I went to order more, and it's not in this season. Like, it's been not just not in this season's palette, it's been removed. It's like they had 2 greens and this one, or they brought in a new green and this one left. And it doesn't matter that it's still popular. We had someone come in the shop the other day who said, so what are the popular colors this season? And that is not an easy question to answer.
A lot of the new stuff that we're seeing is going pastel. Like
the predictions are this season it will be pastel. And I don't know if we've really followed up on that as much as the yarn companies want. I mean, we're not engaging in new colors as much as we were pre-pandemic. We're sticking to our staples and bringing in some fun things. But yeah, it's been interesting to watch what yarn companies think will be popular versus what people are actually buying in the shop. And I can't say that we keep track so well that we can really identify that if a customer comes in and asks.
Yeah.
It's just general sense.
I think going back to the first question, I think that's why indie dyers can be so fun because all of them have a different personality that they transfer to their yarn. And so like everybody's got a different color palette, everybody's got a different, style for doing indie dyed yarn. So, it's nice that there is a fallback for when commercial is like, hey, we're all going pastels, and everybody's like, no.
Right. Yeah.
Or hey, we're going to take this color out, and everybody's like, what? No.
Like some of our indie dyers have really bold color palettes, and some have really bright color palettes, and some have soft ones. And it's always fascinating, and it's hard to predict what will sell. So trying to have a little bit of everything, we do what we can, but that means we're going to have a little bit of not what you want. So but yeah, I think to wrap up on that, it's important to balance getting in what you like versus also what someone else might like, and again approaching it from that idea of all the colors of the rainbow, even though there's nuances to those colors. Like, can we pick within those the ones we like, or with the ones we find appealing? Then we have a wide range. A lot of yarns, I think I'll try to bring in like 5 to 8 colors at least to start. And within that, like, say if we're limited to 5 colors, we're probably going to have at least 2 of those be neutrals. And then we might want to get the primary colors in, or we might just want to get 3 colors that are interesting, that span, like not all blues or not all blue and green. Like we want some warm and some cool in there.
Well, when we brought in
like
the
that.
Alba, we brought in 2 grays, the
there's a couple colors missing,
light blue and the burgundy. And
that
then
was like it, right?
Yeah. And we were like, we'll try it. And people were like, ooh.
I think we might have had the green in there too, right?
And we, as we had time and inclination and money, we,
added to that a little.
Popped another color or 2 in there,
and now we're super low on some of the new colors or other colors, and but we only had like 5 colors.
I'd say that buying yarn for a shop is like buying yarn to make a friend something that likes colors that you might not gravitate to. Like,
there's some amount of
you kind of have to, well, like we have some knitters who are like, I have to make a hat, a shawl, whatever for a friend, and they like this category of colors, but my category of colors is over here. Like, I like just straight up grays and they want orange.
I'm not the biggest fan of orange, but I'm not gonna not have orange in the shop, because someone is gonna be like, oh my gosh, that's gorgeous. And for them, they are right. It is gorgeous. For me, I'm gonna go, I wouldn't wear it, but that's okay. So yeah. Anyway, I've stumbled across some colors that I wouldn't normally wear as much yellow as I do, but there are shop colors, and I decided to try knitting with some of it, and I've enjoyed it. So, sometimes you never know. I feel like we should go and get ready for the day. I hope you enjoyed both our fun and our bickering at each other a little today.
This happens every day, all day. Come all visit us.
When you ask us questions, you get to see it more. Ta-da! Anyway, so thanks for joining us. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing. What's this? You could
subscribe, like, ring the bell, comment, all the fun stuff that makes it work.
Right. Eventually, I keep talking about this, but eventually we'll have memberships, which are subscriptions over here, where you can be like a top commenter, or we have to figure out levels for that. But you can always, like, money is not necessary, but it's always helpful, but it's not necessary. Like, subscribe, all the stuff that Liz is mentioning is free of charge to do and benefits the shop. Just because it helps the algorithms of YouTube say, hey, maybe someone else wants to watch this. If you would like to support the shop and you don't need any yarn right now, you can give us a super thanks. I think I've turned that on for this. It's kind of like giving a tip. Or you can go over to patreon.com/sundragon, and you can subscribe over there for a monthly contribution to the shop. And after 3 months, you get some kind of swag. Patreon sends you stuff, which is really cool. It's how I got my Sun Dragon mug, is I got it from Patreon, because we can't, can't even get to the logistics of like customized mugs and how much it costs and how many we have to find a home for here in the shop. But and what price we'd have to charge you for that. Oh my gosh. But we have sit and stitch tomorrow night.
We do.
Before we go, let's just go over the schedule until we see you again. 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, over on Zoom. Tomorrow night, Friday night, get in with the shop phone number.
828-877-3550.
And then this Sunday is our monthly sit and stitch on both Facebook Live. You can just tune in and write comments and stuff. And if I see them fast enough, I read them out to the Zoom crew and everything. Or you can come join us on Zoom. And that is the same shop phone number, but it is from 1 to 5 p.m. on Sunday. That is August 14th, I believe. Join us over there and hang out. And it's lots of fun, I think. So
it's fun.
Anything else?
No.
Okay. We got to go set up. We got 5 minutes till the shop opens. You all will see this later in the day, but we have 5 minutes till the shop opens. And
we'll see you Tuesday.
Yes. If we don't see you before then on Zoom, we will see you Tuesday. Bye.